So what I was talking about, you could turn this into a trance for your client, do it in the beginning, and then bring them out, because that's called fractionation. We'll be talking about that's a deepening technique as well, where you put somebody into a little bit of an experience, light hypnotic imagination thing, bring them back out, talk a little bit more, put them back, bring them out, talk a little more. Every time you put them back in, even if it's just a light, just close your eyes and tell me a little bit about that. Okay, anchor it, come back. Every time you do it, the next time they close their eyes, guess what's going to happen?
Deeper.
Yeah, it's a deepener, literally. Because guess why? Because the unconscious mind loves it when that person gets all that crap out of their head for a few seconds. It's like, oh, please let me just go back here again. Let me stay here for a while, right? That's why a lot of people don't want to come out of hypnosis. Some people have never felt that relaxed or happy or good in a long time. They don't want to come back. So you want to always let them know, you created this. I assisted you. I'm helping you by, helping you know how to, get there. Now that you know where it is and how to get there, now you can do this anytime. And the more you do it, the better it gets and the easier it gets and the faster you can get there. And then you can amplify it. So artfully vague. So to turn that, then let's say you've done this with your client in the pre-talk. So now you've already hypnotized them a little bit. You don't have to tell them that, you're just asking questions, and close your eyes for a moment. Tell me more about that. Just without even knowing why. Press your fingers and thumbs, middle fingers and thumbs together, and take a deep breath. Open your eyes now and come back out here. That's the way I do it. Once I got them in that state, I have them hit that. That's part of my pivotal response conditioning. The breath keeps them open. You can't take a deep breath and be relaxed. They're going to be relaxed already. And I have them anchor it like this, fingers and thumbs. And then immediately have them open their eyes. Break that little trance. Because if they're doing this when they start coming down and changing their state, now you've anchored other junk in there with it. You want to get it right at the height, one breath. The anchor should be set instantly, whatever it is, and then have them open their eyes, break the state. Now you've done fractionation, talk some more. Now let's say you want to use that as an induction. So you've done a little bit of talking. You've done maybe that little exercise we just did with your client, which put them a little bit into trance. They got a little preview of what it feels like to let go a little bit. So they're already prepped. Now you can say, now are you ready to really have a nice inner experience of what we call in my field hypnosis, a very comfortable hypnotic experience or something like that? And of course they're going to say, yeah. That's called the verbal agreement, the verbal hypnotic contract. After all the talking and stuff you do at the pre-talk, right before you start to do the official induction, you're going to say, so are you ready? Are you ready to go into hypnosis? You want to get a verbal yes. That's called the hypnotic contract. You might want to remember that for something, I don't know, somewhere down the line in this training. It might show up somewhere, who knows? So you might want to recall the hypnotic contract is right before you start the induction, you ask the client, are you ready to be hypnotized? Or would you like to go into a nice hypnotic relaxation? And they say, yes, that's the contract. Okay. I think I made that perfectly clear. So the way then with that client, after they say yes, now you say, you've already talked to them about their outcome, and we're going to have a whole segment on how to create a well-farmed outcome so the unconscious knows what you're asking it to do during the session instead of a badly farmed outcome like I want to quit smoking or lose weight. Those aren't good outcomes for the unconscious. It doesn't like those. And we'll explain why later. You probably already know a lot of it. So before you start the actual induction now, you already have talked about their well-farmed outcome. You can say now, or you can do this for yourself. You can use what you did today and go back there before you go to sleep. But before you do it to make it hypnosis, instead of just a feel-good experience, you say to yourself, while I'm going through this hypnosis or while I'm sleeping, I want my unconscious mind to help me with my goal of, and then state your outcome. And a well-farmed outcome, for instance, and we'll do more on this, like I said, later quite a bit, So a well-formed outcome for someone wanting to get to us, they weigh 180 and they want to be 120. They might say, while I'm doing this, I would like my unconscious mind to help me with my goal of weighing 120 by, and then a certain date, some kind of a ETA, estimated time of arrival, weighing 120 by New Year's Eve 2025. So the more specific the goal is, the more the mind goes, oh, I better start working on that now, right? So if they say, so that my unconscious mind can help me try to lose weight, that's not a very good outcome. So anyway, you get the message. So tonight you could say something you're working on and put it in positive terms and ask your mind while you're doing your little visit back to this place that you enjoyed here today or someplace else, that you can say before you start, while I'm doing this, I want my unconscious to help me with that goal, and then let it go. That's called completely content-free self-hypnosis in this case, or hypnosis with your client. You could set that outcome and then take them to that place they talked about earlier, and then go on to some more maybe deeper therapeutic type work or some other types of processes. So pretty cool. I think of it as when you're doing that kind of trance work or hypnosis or self-hypnosis, beginning the trance like that with your intention, your goal, it's kind of like you're doing a Google search. Think of it like that. For some people, they can understand that. You're typing in, here's what I want, here's what I want to find, here's what I want to do, here's what I want to be, here's what I want to manifest in my life, whatever, however it's positively stated. And then you let it go, just like when you're Googling something. It goes behind the scenes into the computer and it starts accessing what's it going to take to get this done. So you set it you set the destination and you let go of it, and then you do the rest of the process. Being artfully vague, back to that, when you're working with a client, it's best not to say anything when someone is in a hypnotic state that might not be true, that might, in case their conscious mind is listening, you want to stay away from things that their conscious mind might say, well, that's not what's happening. So in other words, the old style would be someone's going into hypnosis and the hypnotist, and some people still do this, they would say, and you feel warmth in your right hand. You feel the warmth in your right hand, or things like that, or you see something. Just be careful. The language is important, because if you say something about, and as you're drifting here, your right hand, you notice your right hand is warm and it's getting warmer and warmer. If they're in there and their right hand isn't warm, since you just put their attention on it, you've just lost them a little bit, right? So permissive language, the artfully vague language, you can CYA, so to speak, as the hypnotherapist, as the guide, by saying, and as you drift and relax more and more here, you may begin to notice a certain warmth developing in your right hand. You may begin. That means if they go and they think of their right hand and they go, well, I'm not feeling it, most likely their creative mind will say, I'm not feeling it yet, but you planted a seed, didn't you? And in a little while, you might begin to notice that. Or maybe for you, it'll be a cool feeling. Or perhaps a tingling or some other interesting sensation. Or maybe no feeling at all. And wouldn't that be interesting? So now you've covered all the bases. So no matter what they are or are not experiencing, but what you did was you got their mind involved with all this hypnotic talk and focusing on their right hand. Most likely, if someone focuses on their right hand for more than even 10 or 20 seconds, probably, they'll start to notice something. Just because they're putting attention on it makes it start to do. Usually mine starts to get tingly just by thinking about it, right? So, but if it doesn't happen, then you're still covered. Or you may experience nothing at all. And isn't that interesting? That hand isn't even experiencing anything. So you can use that artfully vague language to cover yourself while still getting the person's mind more and more involved with what you're saying. Okay, good stuff. feedback. I'm going to talk now about, because we're going to be doing quite a few breakout sessions in here. And hopefully, if you guys want to, some of my classes like to get together and practice in between weekends and stuff, and that would be fine. Like I said, we're going to be doing breakout sessions throughout this, and you're going to maybe be working together, giving feedback to the person that's working with you and stuff. So here's, I don't know if you all know about the feedback sandwich. You ever heard of a feedback sandwich? Yeah. For purposes of learning, because we don't want to criticize ever in here. If I ever do it, please, stop me and say, Patty, listen to what you just said and bring it to my attention, because I would never intentionally criticize someone. I give feedback. I think of it as feedback. And by the way, it's just my opinion. Doesn't mean it's right. Doesn't mean it's the best feedback. It just means it's what I'd like you to consider based on my understanding of all this. Because this is about helping you think, helping you expand the way you think about things, not to confine it. Like I said, I'm really not into labeling or putting things in a box. I want you to consider all possibilities. So the feedback sandwich isn't criticism. Like I said, after you finish a little practice with someone, when you're giving them feedback about, like, say somebody just hypnotized you and you want to give them feedback afterwards, you start out with a positive. The feedback sandwich is you start with a positive. You start with something that was enjoyable, something that was pleasant, something that you really liked. And then in the middle of the sandwich, you put the feedback of things that you thought might have been better for you in some different way, or something that you would have liked to have more of, or maybe it would have been better with a little less for me, or different in some way. So in other words, the feedback of what you thought could have been better in a certain way. And then the other part of the sandwich then is back to the positive again. And all of that, the overall experience, was, here's what I got from it that's positive. And it does a couple things. First of all, because in training, by the design of learning something that's different from what you've learned before, the only way you do learn is when you don't do it perfectly. I hate to say that, but when you're first learning something, I don't know of anyone who starts learning something and does it perfect the first time. There might be some exceptions to that, because I guess everything has some exceptions. But for learning to do this kind of work, it's, me and Art, we're talking about, we're lifetime students, because it always can get better. It keeps hopefully always improving and getting better. As you're learning it brand new, it's always awkward. Just by design, learning something you haven't done before is awkward. And I always say, when you're practicing stuff in this class, if you don't feel a little uncomfortable, you're probably not learning anything. So if you get real uncomfortable, you can take a breath and remind yourself, boy, I must really be learning a lot, because I'm really uncomfortable. Patty said I'm learning, so I'll just trust it and keep going, even though I'm really uncomfortable. Because it's just the way it is. I still get that way when I go to other people's things and they ask me to do something, and then my head starts jumping in, and I got to remind it, go away, clear it. You're not allowed to have an opinion. I'm learning something new. Of course it feels weird or strange, or it's not the way I would do it, right? I would never do it like this. Do it anyway. Just because you're here to learn, right? And something positive will come from it. So that's the feedback sandwich, though. And the feedback is always, well, for me, it could have been, I kind of wish you would have slowed down a little bit. These are some examples of things you could say. What would have made it better for you? In other words, that's what the feedback. Yeah, if you would have spoken a little more slowly, The artfully vague language, there are certain phraseologies that go along with permissive language or conversational style of hypnosis that makes the whole reason it is so powerful and why it's so popular now is because it allows the client to feel really comfortable just going with what you're offering. It eliminates that, if there is any tendency to resist, because most people don't want to be told what to do. By the time they're adults, and probably even when they're kids, the old style is do this, think that, feel this. And first of all, they might not, and you might be wrong. And to me, it's about words like notice, imagine. And I've had people who say, I can't imagine. So I probably wouldn't use that word with them, but everybody can imagine. And I've had people who say, I don't get pictures in my mind. And you keep saying, see this and see that and see this and picture this. I don't get pictures. And with people like that, you can have discussions with them, but I would just stay away from those kinds of words. Think about this in whatever way your mind knows to think about it, right? They might feel it. They might sense it. They just might know it, and they don't even know how they know it. They don't see it. They don't hear it. They don't feel it. They don't smell it. They don't taste it. They just know it. So that's fine. Because guess what? Again, if they can think and follow directions and they want to be hypnotized, you have to go with the way their mind works. That's why it's nice to have a lot of variety and flexibility of ways to do all of these things. And like I said, if you use the permissive style of languaging, you can avoid a lot of those problems and those sticking points with a client that you maybe don't know well yet, or with any client for that matter, by using things like become aware of. Wouldn't it be nice if you could something? Then that way, if their mind doesn't really think they can, they're still not going to really be focused on not being able to do it. They're just, wouldn't it be nice? Yeah, it'd be really nice if I could get pictures in my head. At least you've opened it up a little bit now to the possibility. Again, possibility language. That's what I call it. Okay, that's enough for now on the language. But you get what I'm saying? Like, you don't want to dig a hole for yourself by telling the client what they're experiencing, just in case they aren't experiencing that. And there's a lot of hypnosis scripts out there that do that. We're going to get into some more of the language here. Matter of fact, let me just, there's some very, very simple, because we got about a half hour here. So I'm going to just pull this up now since we're talking about language. Some of the very simplest little patterns that you'll notice as we go through. Oh, this is out of sequence, but I'm going to bring this up real quick just to show you. I like to look up the meaning of words, because sometimes the unconscious hears certain aspects of a word and it means something different to them. And I use that word subtext because I said it was from my old showbiz days. That's how I think of what I'm detecting behind the verbal words the person is saying, that I'm noticing the subtext. What's the meaning behind the words is the way I explain it. So I thought, let me look at what this means. The surface, at that one chart I showed you, that would be the top part, right? The presenting issue, the symptom, the behavior, the habit. The surface is the external or superficial aspect of something. And then it says trouble lurks beneath the surface, or below the surface. It's an external part or layer, right? So think about that as a metaphor for what we're doing in hypnosis. In that chart that I showed you, that surface is superficial. The symptom is not the real problem. The cigarette is not the real problem. You could apply it to all of this stuff. So surface, on the surface, to all outward appearances, this is the problem, in other words, right? And then I looked up the word subtext because I had been using it for years. I thought I better see how that pans out. And I love it. It says the hidden meaning, what exists between the lines, the implicit or metaphorical meaning. It fits perfectly for what we're doing with hypnosis. We want to respect what the client says they're here for and what they think about it on a conscious level. And once we start the work, we know we're going to be moving beyond that to that deeper meaning, that hidden meaning, that it may even be hidden to them, to their conscious part of their mind. And again, metaphorical, because it's the creative part of the mind. It's the emotional part of the mind. It goes way beyond words. So I kind of like it, like looking up words like that, because that made so much sense. I'm going to add that somewhere in one of my PowerPoints or handout or something someday in my spare time. So we're talking about the simplest imaginable hypnotic language patterns. These are so common. you could go, once you're a member, a student member of IACT, you could go and find a script on their website. And I'll bet you could notice these patterns through there. Any hypnosis script, you're going to notice some of these, probably. Sometimes many, many times. The first one is just a simple idea of the more, the more. And here's an example of the more, the more. Again, hypnotic language. The more deeply and easily you breathe, the more comfortable and relaxed you can become. And the more comfortable and relaxed you become, the deeper and easier your breathing can be. See? Very simple. It's a very hypnotic, rhythmic thing. The more this happens, the more that happens. It's putting their attention on things, and it's saying can become. I changed this from the IACT manual, by the way. You're going to find this in there, and it says the more relaxed you become. You're telling the person to get relaxed. I think it's much more effective to say the more comfortable and relaxed you can become. The unconscious mind goes, oh, I can get more comfortable. I can get more relaxed. Instead of someone's telling me to relax. How the heck am I supposed to do that? It's just a different, it's a different, softer, gentler way to get people to smoothly go into this work. And it doesn't have to be the words more. Here's another example of that same concept with different words. The longer you spend in hypnosis, the easier it will be for you to do the next time. That's kind of a post-hypnotic suggestion, so that when you hypnotize them the next time, their mind will say, oh, it's going to get easier every time. Isn't that wonderful? Right? So the longer, the more you spend in hypnosis, the easier, the more it will be for you to do the next time. So it's the same concept. You get that. Good hypnotic clients, in your book, it'll say subjects. I still haven't found a word that really I like to use instead of subject. It's just not a good word. I don't think most people even like using that word in psychology anymore, but I haven't heard what's the alternative, what's the replacement word. So I just use clients. Good hypnotic clients. This is a hypnotic language pattern, meaning their language patterns to help your client to go into hypnosis. As you sit comfortably in the chair with your hands resting easily in your lap and breathing in that gentle, restful way. This is assuming that's what they're doing. Don't say it if that's not what they're doing, obviously. You are demonstrating the position of good hypnotic that good hypnotic clients choose. So you're describing what they're already doing, and you're saying, and that tells the way I say it is more like, and that tells me you're going to be a wonderful hypnotic client. Or I might say, probably, if I'm in the zone already, I might say something like, and that tells me you're going to be really good at this. Something like that. It's very encouraging. It's you as the hypnosis expert telling this person that you're wanting to go more into hypnosis, that they're really good at this. That because you're the expert. If you say it, they're going to believe it. If you say it congruently, once you've got rapport and trust and all that from the pre-talk, which is a big part of it. And we'll be talking a lot about that. So you're just describing whatever the client's already doing and telling them, this tells me you're going to be wonderful at this. You have a great imagination. You know, whatever they do, I blow it up like it's like you're going to be the best. You're like my ideal client. I say that to people. I wish all my clients could be like you. It makes them feel good. It puts them at ease. And it makes them think they must be good at it because you're the hypnosis expert. And it gives them confidence that this is going to work for them. Some people, this is a nice hypnotic. Again, it's CYA. It keeps you out of trouble sometimes. Some people like to imagine themselves on a beautiful beach, while others like to imagine a countryside. And still others might prefer going to a very special place of their own where they can go and relax. So you're giving them some ideas, and it's almost like a little bit of a bind too. You're saying some people want to do this, some people want to do that, others might want to do that. You're covering a lot of variables, but the bottom suggestion that they're hearing is you're going to a place that's beautiful, that's special, where you can go and relax, right? So their mind is searching their memory banks and their imagination for a place. Maybe they saw it in a movie, or it doesn't have to be even from their life, right? Oh, I always wanted to go to Greece and those white buildings. Oh my goodness, it's beautiful. Okay. So here's another one. In a moment, I will X and you will Y. X and Y, of course, are the variables. Here's an example. In a moment, I will count from 1 to 3. And when I say the number 3, you will recall that important memory from your childhood. So I'm going to do this or say this, and you will do this or say that. This is almost the same as X, Y, or when X, Y. As you continue to focus on that spot, you may discover that your eyes want to close. Actually, that also has an embedded command. We're going to cover that in a minute, but there's a couple of different language patterns in there. As you continue to focus on that spot, because you've already got them doing that, so you're stating something that is true and verifiable that's already happening. As you do this, you may, permissive, you may discover that your eyes want to close. When you do it that way, it's an embedded command. See, because the unconscious hears your eyes want to close. That's called an embedded command, because you want their eyes to close eventually. And if it hears that enough, it's going to zone out and close their eyes for you. Cause and effect language. Just being aware of the sensations in your hand can cause a certain movement to begin. This is if you're looking for some ideomotor signals, right? Little yes and no signals from their fingers, ideomotor things. Now that we're doing a lot of stuff online, I don't find myself doing a lot of that because I can't see their hands most of the time. And I haven't found a real comfortable way for the person to give me an ideomotor signal other than a nod of the head or something, maybe a gentle nod. You know, if you want to get that, fine. I don't feel the need to do it, but it is something you want to know how to do as a hypnotherapist. And it is kind of fun to do in person with with them. It gives you an idea of just how deeply they're in that hypnotic trance following you. So cause and effect. Every time you hear me say relax, it does cause you to relax more. See? So this causes that. It's very hypnotic. Embedded commands I just talked about. The easiest word to slip in that for the unconscious will help them to relax is the word rest, because it kind of has a double meaning, right? For the rest of this session, you may find that even if right now you don't want to close your eyes, you can keep them open until they really want to close. I'm combining these now because it's just fun to do that. They're actually separate examples, but you can do this. It's very hypnotic. So in the first sentence, in that first example, the word rest, you just give it a little punch, a little emphasis, with either a little bit of a pause before you say it, or with a little different tone, and as they're going into the hypnotic state, they're just starting to hear those words more and more, and their unconscious keeps taking them more and more in. Rest. In the second example, don't close your eyes until they really want to close. The unconscious is hearing, it keeps hearing, close your eyes. They really want to close. And that message is getting through without saying, close your eyes, which is another way to get them to close their eyes. I think it's nicer if they have the experience of noticing they just kind of seemed like they just closed all on their own. I don't know what happened. What did you do to me, Art? You made me close my eyes. Well, not really, but it's nice that your mind thought it was a good idea, because next week when you come back, you may even find that your eyes want to close even earlier than they did today. Now that you know what a wonderful place they took you to when they did that for you. They did it. I didn't do anything. I'm just talking, right? So it's much nicer if the client feels like they feel they have a sense of control over what's happening. You're not being a dictator. You're not telling them what to do like a stage hypnotist, which works, for those people. But for therapeutic hypnosis, I think this is a kinder, gentler way. So I don't know how quickly or how slowly you will go into trance. It's also a bind, isn't it? You know, it's totally up to you whether you close your eyes now, or you may decide to close your eyes in a little while. Right? But your choices are you can close them now or later. You don't really, you know, the unconscious hears that bind and it thinks it has choice. It's the illusion of choice. It's kind of cool. And you can, you know, feel secure in the knowledge that you are learning something, even if your conscious mind isn't yet aware of what that is. And you don't even know that you know. What is that phrase from yesterday? I love that Robin gave me, and I still don't have it perfect, but I like the idea of it. Fillers and confidence builders. I love these. I use these a lot, and they are so powerful. They're so simple, and it's most people don't appreciate how powerful these words are when someone's even in a light trance or going into trance. And they're little words like, and this was one of Tad James' favorites. Everybody made fun of him for it. That's right. He would say that all the time. That's right. You're doing so very well. Very good. They're totally benign. They're not mentioning anything specific, but they're these little confidence builders. They make the person feel good. Wonderful. Nice. Beautiful. That's right. That's the best one. I don't know why it never gets old. Now, I added these to the list. These aren't in your book, and I'm going to add some more. This is one of Art's favorites, I know, and I have all my career I've worked at catching myself and finding an alternative way to say this, because it is true. A lot of hypnotists say it a lot, and people in the helping fields. It's just something that got out there at some time, and everybody repeated it, and everybody writes it and says it and does it, and we all are copycats. That's how we learn. We copy something. Unless we change it in our own mind, it stays the way we heard it. I want you to. That's a phrase that some hypnotists say it so much that it really, really gets to me. And when I say it now, I catch myself. Sometimes it's out of my mouth already, but at least now I'm aware when I say it, and I really work not to say it, because it implies that what you want is important. It's a subtle implication, but it is an implication. And it's not important what you want. It's important that you help the client get what they want. I want you to. And if someone's in hypnosis, I'm going to add this one too. There's something that I hear a lot of people do that have been in this field for a long time, where when somebody is in hypnosis, they put themselves into, and I'm not talking about like that thing we did today. There are times when it is appropriate that you want to be there with the person. That's fine. I'm talking about when you're doing therapeutic work where they are working on something that's very personal to them. You don't belong in that experience with them. You're the guide. You're guiding them. You're not part of their change work. You're not in there with them usually. You want to be separate from them. Because if you're there with them, sometimes they're gonna think that that's why they got the change, because you did it. You were there with me and you made this happen. You want them to have the ability to take credit for it. Yeah, Art.
Is it the word we?
That's one of them. That's one of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now we're going to go down these stairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We are not.
Yeah. I just don't think it's appropriate to be in there with them, because we want them to take the full credit for they found it. We're not the one that made this happen. They did it. There's another one that I just thought of a minute ago that somebody did the other day. I'm hoping it'll come back because it's a really big one, and I've heard a lot of people that do it. But it was like that, but it was a different variation of it. And this is one. I know how you feel. A lot of people in the helping fields use this term. And I hate to break it to them, those that do it. But like I said, with all due respect, you don't know how I feel. If you say that to me, that's what my head is doing. There's no way you know how I feel. well, but I had that same kind of an experience. You still don't know how I feel. Or I have something 10 times worse happen. You still don't know how I feel. Right? Because I know people that come to me with what they call a crisis or a major trauma in their life. And since my conscious mind is always still listening too, I am not reacting like, but I am sometimes aware that I have had crises in my life that were, in my logical opinion, 100 times worse than that. That doesn't matter. It's completely unimportant. So when I go in with a client, my stuff has to be gone. It's irrelevant. If that person's crisis, to them, it's important. And I have to help them I have to take it with the level of importance that they give it. Even if it had happened to me, I would have just brushed it off, right? It doesn't matter. So it's disrespectful to say, I believe. And this, again, this might be just me and a few others' opinion. I don't know. How do you feel about that one? I know how you feel. Because people think that connects you with, I mean, in everyday conversation, that might not be a bad thing to say sometimes. But I'm talking about in a therapeutic, hypnotic type experience. What do you think about that, Art?
I know exactly how you feel about that.
Yeah,
No,
that's what you think. That's what you think.
that's what you think.
And I just think better
That's a
phrases.
good
If
one.
someone's telling you something, you want to be compassionate and caring and all that wonderful stuff and let them know that you hear them. Because people want to tell you their story because sometimes nobody's really they don't feel like anybody's listening the way we can. Because we connect and we pay attention to them. And like Ann Spencer, we find a way to do what she does. Her ritual was I send out I love you from my mind and they feel it. And now I can connect with them. I have my own ritual, my own way that I connect with my clients. So, and people that think it's good to have empathy and to feel someone's pain. If you're in pain, you're not going to be able to help that person. I hate to tell you. So you can still be even closer, in my opinion, by understanding and listening and connecting with them and really listening and getting out of your own head. And then you can help them and you can have compassion and love and understanding and all of that at a much higher, more effective level to be able to help them. Yeah, Art.
Another question is when someone says, how do you feel about that? That's irritating to me. If somebody said, "Oh, my dog died, my favorite dog. We've been together for 12 years and all."
Oh, if
And
it's a
you're,
negative,
so,
yeah,
so
yeah,
how does
yeah.
that make you feel? And I'm thinking, I already know pretty much a little bit anyway about how you're probably feeling. And I don't want to call that up and ask. The Japanese have a very interesting thing, part of their culture about this. If someone loses a family member, for example, they would never bring it up in conversation because they
Yeah.
feel like if that person, I don't want to be the reason that they have to go back into that memory that they may have just gotten escape from it, and now I'm putting them right back in there again. So they
Right.
say if they want me to know anything about that situation, they will bring it up, but I'm never going to. And a lot of people say, well, that's really uncaring. That's like you don't care. No, it's that I respect their privacy about this issue, and I want to let them be in charge of it. I don't want to force them back into a memory that they're not having right now. Interesting cultural difference.
Yeah, yeah. I think my husband, he did some stuff in Korea at one time, and he was talking about when they were training them to go over there. They have something similar that someone that has a higher up in charge of them, that the person that's under them will never bring up something bad that's happening in their life because it would make the other person feel bad.
Feel bad. Yeah.
That's a whole other cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
That they actually, yeah, he was talking about it's a real considered very bad to put it on someone else if you have
Yeah.
a something going on. Boy, I wish I could remember that phrase. It'll come to me when I sleep tonight. That's when it'll
Yeah.
pop in. I
Yeah.
keep
It'll
my
come
pen and
in.
paper handy. Okay, so I understand. I hear you. You can be much more empathetic the way I think is useful empathy. I like to call it compassion and love and caring because empathy, people think that means I got to feel it. And that kind of just makes you weaker than, than you could be. Why questions? I have a real thing about why questions. Now, some why questions, just like tell me how you feel. If I'm interrupting a pattern in the pre-talk where the person all of a sudden shifts into a good state, now I might want to take them back there and say, how does that feel? Because that's positive. That might be useful to, or it will be useful to help them through whatever the challenges they brought in. But the same thing with why questions. If you're asking in the pre-talk, if you're talking about forming their outcome, that's one of the exceptions. I say with very few exceptions. The why question can discover what motivates them. What's the point? Why do you want to do this? What's so important about this to you? You could find out what are their motivators by that. But most of the time, to my experience, the why questions, all they get is reasons. And what do reasons do? They put the focus on and they give more support to the problem or the issue. It's like the old style of psychotherapy. Oh, we've been in therapy for 20 years and hallelujah, I just found out why I have this problem. We discovered it. Yay. Well, the bad news is I still got the problem, but at least I know why now, right? So that's not, hypnotherapy is the antithesis of that. We're always looking at what's the solution? What's the outcome? Where do we want to be? How do we want to feel? So it's a real different thing. So again, why questions can just start digging that, giving more support to the problem. What and how questions, like we were talking about earlier, they usually can get more useful information. Here's just a couple of examples. What does that mean to you? And again, that way I'm not mind reading what I think it meant. They just told me something. I know what I think it should mean, what it would have meant to me, and I'm assuming that's what it meant to them. No, ask them, what did that mean to you? How does that make you feel, again, in the context of something positive? Something positive. Not how does that make you feel that you just were told you have cancer? Well, that's not going to help us get to an outcome that's going to be, in a good direction here. What's important about that? That's kind of a nice question to ask. Now you can start to figure out what are their values. What's important to them gives you some, again, it could be some motivators, could tell you some of the values that drive their life and their behaviors and things. So that can be nice. So there you go. Basic language patterns. Pretty cool, huh? It's almost the end of your first, as Michael Watson would say, the first weekend of the rest of your life. I love that. The first time I brought him to Palm Harbor when I moved here to train, he said that the first day, and it was on the whiteboard for everybody to see when they came in. I just love that. He said, "Welcome to the first day of the rest of your life." It's a Michael Watsonism. So I will be sending you the handouts that we did for this weekend, and watch your email. And I will also be sending you possibly some other things for you to look at or to read or to watch, maybe a video. I'm going to look at what we did this weekend, and within a day, like I said, I'm going to look at what is the next step of where I want to start having you go. There won't be any real homework other than, like I said, I may send you a video to watch that would be not more than an hour long video for this first break. We're going to keep it real simple. What I will ask you to do is I'm going to be sending you the ethics booklet. What I really would like you to do is start looking through, a few minutes here, a few minutes there, whatever extra time you have, the manual. Start going through the manual. Repetition and getting some of these thoughts and ideas in your head in different ways. Like I said, a lot of the things in the manual, I'm going to be teaching some of them a little differently, some of them completely differently. Some of them I won't be going over at all here because we don't have time to cover every single thing in the manual. And I've got some other things I bring to this training that I have been bringing for years that aren't even in the manual that I think are at least so far superior to what I see in the manual, that I would rather go over some of these things from teachers that I learned from. And they do give us that freedom. So you have a lot, you have like a whole nother set of education available to you in that manual. That's the I Act, and I put my company name on it now too, because I'm going to continue to keep adding things to it. But you just know you're going to have way more than that as extra handouts. So you might want to get a big binder that you can add a whole lot of paper to, because you're going to have scripts and research and articles and all kinds of stuff. So everybody happy? Hopefully everybody's happy. You have a good weekend this weekend. And always know, like I said, remember the contract, and you're always learning more unconsciously than you are aware of on a conscious level. So as long as you keep staying happy and curious and having fun, because if it isn't fun, what's the point? That's the way I feel about everything in life. If you can't make it fun, what's the point? And sometimes when it gets real serious, the fact that you kept it fun most of the time will help you get through those times. You start at a lighter level. All right. So in between, if you want to contact me, I know Art's available. You know I'm available.